sessions. So, all right. So without further ado, I think, Alicia, you're going to probably start. Is that what I heard?
That's what I'll try.
All right. And we'd like to welcome Teens Trails, who has some updated information and additional strategies to share with you. And they have some co-presenters and guests with you. I love the flowers, Todd. Nice touch. I will say, Todd, it's Tuesday.
No sweater vest today, sorry.
Well, it is the end of the school year, so we'll let you off the hook.
We had an assembly for people moving on and leaving our building, retiring. So I put my professional on.
Gotcha. Nice. Okay, well, I'll let you guys get started, and appreciate you being here with us and sharing with all of our teachers. And we've heard positive things about the first session, and they're looking forward to the second session and getting more information. So without further ado, I will turn it over to y'all.
All right, well, I appreciate that. I unfortunately am not able to screen share, or at least not in the way that I was accustomed to being able to do it.
You're muted, Susan. I couldn't, but I was muted too.
Try again, Alicia. You should be able to do it now.
That's not working for me. So perhaps Jean could share her screen.
And so just to help,
I can do that. Yes.
Is it you? So you think it's your computer, Alicia?
It worked earlier today. It just keeps opening system preferences as opposed to giving me access to the files that I was ready to show. But maybe Jean can get hers going.
Yeah, if you make it so I can share a screen.
You should be all set, Jean.
Okay. And you're seeing now how I'm new to using it. What do I click on to get the regular slideshow to go?
You can use that.
Oh, there, I see.
There you go. Yeah, that's great.
Is it showing? Did it change, or I need to switch screens now?
It's fine either way. It's fine just to share that one. But thank you. That's just what we were hoping for. So my welcome is short and sweet. It's to introduce those of you who are less familiar with Teens to Trails to what we do and who we are. A nonprofit started in 2006 based in Brunswick, but we do like to work across the state. Our focus is on the teenage population, so we're working primarily with high schools, but what we want to share today is applicable to any school. And Jean, if you'll go to the next. The basic outline for our presentation today is very collaborative, and we hope it will be very interactive. After I give a quick overview, then the program manager, Jean Christie, who is running the slides now, will share more about the details of what we do as an organization. And then we really wanted to turn it to who we see as the experts, which is those of you working in the classroom. So Todd will talk about some techniques he has. Ian Ramsay from North Yarmouth Academy is going to share some of his expertise, and just really working together to try and help all of us make more connection between kids and the outdoors while you are able to satisfy your learning requirements. So let's make it collaborative. We believe that experiencing nature is critical for teenage development. Unfortunately, it's happening less and less in the family setting, and time is a huge barrier. Skills are a barrier, access to gear, as well as the cash to get outdoors. And we try to address all of those with the programs that we offer for high schools. And we do this by helping schools establish and then support outing clubs. So it really is in the extracurricular space that we have been working, and we'd love to be able to bring more outdoor time into the regular school day, whether that be within the PE and health classes, within a science class, or just in a free period. You know this well. I just put this slide in to make sure that you knew that we knew that physical activity within the school day is really really important, that grades go up, test scores go up, kids are just generally happy. So we are full supporters of bringing physical activity into the school day in all parts of one's life. And just a little bit of context, that I stay as connected as I can to what's happening in the outdoor recreation space in Maine, because we're promoting outdoors for kids, and it's a lifestyle that I lead and enjoy. And so places like Maine Trail Finder, it's just a fabulous online resource. Their visitorship is just going through the roof. It's up almost 200% over last year, with people going online saying, I want to get outdoors, I want to take a hike. Where is the trailhead? How long is the trail? How steep is the trail? Can I bring my dog? Where is the parking lot? Or even the simple question is this trail open, since some places have been closed during the COVID restrictions? There's been a boom in the sales of camping equipment. We are part of an outdoor industry group called Maine Outdoor Brands, and these next couple of slides are shared by them, but people are buying more tents, more hammocks, more camping gear, more bike trailers and joggers, building campfires in the backyard. We are home, and we're going to use all parts of our home, not just the inside part, in order to live as full a life as we can. And then the final bit of context, I'm hoping feels inspiring, that not only is being outside good, is physical activity good for one's life, but perhaps there's some kids who turn outdoor recreation into their career. The outdoor recreation economy is a really significant portion of Maine's economy. And then as far as a national perspective, Maine ranks 3rd in the nation for the value of outdoor recreation to our economy. So like, it is play, it is fun, but it's also really important to other aspects of the state. All right, Jean.
Sure.
Back to you.
So what we normally do in a school year is that we have programs where we have skill building programs, but these are our weekends or days where we bring multiple schools together during the year, the Outdoor Leadership Conference to learn skills, Acadia Rendezvous to do a service project and have fun, winter skills weekend to learn skills needed in the winter outdoors and outdoor activities, and stay out overnight in a yurt or a cabin with a wood stove. And then a weekend in mid-May up at Adventure Bound on the Kennebec River, camping, learning skills, and rafting. We also support individual outing clubs with a trip lottery so they can get free or deeply discounted trips to undertake activities that their club is interested in. And then we have grants to clubs, probably our most important program, where we provide grants to support the activities of outing clubs and help them overcome the specific barriers to outing clubs at that school, whether it's transportation, access to gear, being able to, rent a unheated cabin in the winter, whatever they need, and other things as well. And increasingly, we are trying to find ways that we reduce the administrative burden on outing club leaders. I view that as sort of our job is to make it so they have more time with the teenagers doing things, and kind of make it easier to find the trips to carry them out, to figure out what other schools are doing that they might want to try doing as well. So that's what we normally do. But it's not a normal time, and it's not likely to be a normal school year next year. So normally we wouldn't be doing any outreach in the summer. We'd be getting organized for the next school year, but we have been hearing that now parents are going from being teachers part-time to being, basically the summer camp counselors, and that there's still social distancing going on. So we have committed to providing ideas for outdoor activities and distributing those ideas through our network and maybe through others throughout the year. And we are about fun. So this is not how to teach to, learn a skill necessarily, but fun activities to have outside. And then we want to, find and continue to seek ways to collaborate, both in figuring out how we can help each other through this school year and how we can continue those partnerships in the years going forward. And while we are focused on the, outdoor having fun, relaxing, we also recognize that learning in the outdoors and teaching in the outdoors is a really powerful tool. And I'm going to post a link to an article on how Scotland is thinking of, maybe incorporating the outdoors much more in the coming school year. So we're really excited about schools here in the United States and of course other parts of the world that are pursuing ideas around teaching outside. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to turn it over to Todd to help us understand, maybe how that might work.
Todd, do you need me to share the screen?
Nope. Greetings from Rumford in the Western Maine Mountains, everybody. This wasn't my original plan for my presentation. My goal was to do a flip grid that I could share, but I got a little cramped up on time, and I'm sort of a middle-of-the-road tech guy, so we're gonna make sure this happens old school. So when we're thinking about our school buildings and our districts, and this is for me about promoting getting outside, and whether it's the phys ed getting outside or every department or classroom increasing the amount of student time outside. So that's sort of my goal. And it's nice to talk about it, and Ian's going to give some great information and some physiological stuff. But once we recognize and understand it's good to get students outside and incorporate our classrooms outside, then we need to take action. So a lot of times we have a presentation that ends and people are like, that's nice, that was a nice presentation, but hopefully with this little tool, we'll actually get people to take the next step. And once people get active with something, they embrace it and grab it. And I think it has more of a chance of the tread getting in the ground and getting this ingrained in our culture of our school. So this is called an inventory. And this is something I'm going to do with my staff in my building. So I'm going to walk you through my inventory. Learning and teaching spaces outside. Give you just a nice close-up, and then I'll talk about it. Number one, you want to communicate with your staff. You want to collaborate, and then you want to advocate what you're trying to do. And we want to include all the stakeholders in your building, whether it's from the custodial down through the lunch department and up through your administrators, and include everyone. Number two, promote the concept school-wide and make it not so much another initiative, but more of an invitation. And once you've given some of the data on how healthy this can be for students, and detrimental it can be to locked into screen time and building time, we've already seen in our building classrooms being split in half and creating these small little cramped learning areas. And I kind of like shuddered just looking at what school might look like. So by giving people an outlet to get outside, it's going to be helpful. So here's the action part. We're going to document. We're going to gather information. We're going to go explore outside around our campus, around our buildings. We're going to make lists, and the lists are going to look like this. 3 things. First, what outdoor venues already exist or features on or near your campus? Use a small group to do this. Take stock, create a list, make a pictograph or a map of those spaces. And then you go with what areas are already in use, okay? And what I'm gonna do is talk to you a little bit about, you could take a poll, you can go online, use your staff email, or you could do an activity in a staff meeting. And I'm going to put up an example of what we call a carousel. So let's say you have your staff meeting in the library. You put up these sheets. So we've developed what the learning spaces are around campus. At Mountain Valley High School, we have a Hosmer walking trail. We have this big oak grove. We have a mountain bike trail. We have what we call Scotty's Hill, the old ski area. We have a waterfall and a brook. We have our challenge course, a ropes course. We are 5-minute walk down to the Swift River. And then we have an area called the Senior Garden right on a grassy spot. So what you'd have your staff do is walk around, and they can list, if their class goes outside, where they go and what they do and when they do it, okay? And how they do it, how they link it to standards or a lesson. You could, through this, you could start to tabulate how many hours and get a baseline of your students in your building that have class time outside. And that's, if you can establish a number, a hard number of, okay, it looks like we have probably 280 hours of student time that our building does. Can we improve that? You challenge your staff. Then lastly, after you've kind of decided what's available already, who's using it already, then you go on to the future. What does that look like? Can we enhance existing spaces, improve the spaces we have, celebrate those who are already doing it, okay? Make a big deal of that. Present new spaces, or the yurt idea, the amphitheater. Many schools have these spaces already. Maybe your school would like to add one. This would be a great chance for that external yurt with a platform. Maybe it's a lean-to, a large lean-to, or just an awning. Amphitheaters are great. They call them kivas in some schools. Back in the 70s, they made schools without walls, but they had pits that with very round spaces called kivas. Then have people put their name to it. Sign up. Create the outdoor ed space committee. Get a committee going. Drive it forward. Keep the pedal to the metal. And I think that's what an inventory can look like at each building, each district in the state. Is that too quick? Is that good?
I thought it was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So should I hop on then next?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Introduce yourself again.
Perfect, cool. So hey everybody, my name's Ian Ramsay. I teach at North Yarmouth Academy in Yarmouth, where I direct the Kaufman program for environmental writing and wilderness exploration. It's a program that I started about 5 years ago. I've been teaching for over 20 years. And I teach a variety of subjects, including environmental writing, outdoor environmental leadership, a little bit of music, and also some brain science, physiology, and mindfulness. And I try to work to integrate a lot of the outdoor programming and the mindfulness throughout our school's curriculum, from preschool all the way to high school. And I also lead a lot of outdoor programs, and it's everything from taking kids down the street to the park down the road, to taking kids to like way out in the middle of nowhere in Alaskan wilderness. So really wide range of stuff. And then through our program, we also offer a number of programs that are free and open to all Maine high school students, including a sea kayaking program. We're not doing it this summer, we usually do a summer environmental writing seminar that's free. And we also have a statewide environmental writing contest. I'm also on the board of Physiology First, which is a nonprofit that teaches breathwork and other techniques to help students learn to manage their own state and personal anxiety. So I guess for me, the angle, I'll take this. I think that Todd and I are going to complement each other pretty well here. Is I'm going to sort of talk about the idea of combining outdoor education, nature-based, adventure-based learning in conjunction with mindfulness and breath training. Because I think that intersection is really interesting. It offers students tools so they can learn to down-regulate and control their autonomic nervous system. They can learn to manage anxiety, manage their own personal state, and have more agency in their lives. It can also, taking them outside and doing things with them can also help them to live a life that's more movement rich and more connected to where they live with greater empathy for the environment. And so one of the things that's really kind of made me really passionate about this is, I've meditated for 20 years, but in the last few years, all of a sudden there's just sort of been an opening in the culture around mindfulness, breath work, and a lot of that comes from anxiety, right? And I'm not gonna go through the sort of litany of too much of the statistics that I imagine many of us know, but I think what I see is, the question I ask is, what if the anxiety, the depression, the obesity that we're seeing it's not a disorder, it's just an appropriate response to the system these kids have been put in, right? If they are sitting all day under fluorescent lights, they're looking at screens during most of their waking hours, they're eating food that spikes their blood sugar, what's happening from my take, and this is verified by a lot of scientists, is their biology is not working for them, it's working against them. So my goal is to kind of start to find ways to change the system so these kids' biology is working for them. So with that in mind, we have the highest rate of teen anxiety in the nation, right? 16%, third highest rate of kids diagnosed with depression. There's a lot of issues. I won't go too deep into that, but it's at this point, it's a really big issue. And I find that outdoor education and mindfulness is a really good way to deal with this, especially we're experiencing during COVID, right? With increased screen time, students are reporting what science is calling digital concussions, where the long-term screen time results in chronically dilated pupils, where we look at things close up and our pupils dilate and get stressed. Due to a more sitting and a less movement-rich life, students are getting injured more often, right? There's a reason that there's a 400% increase in torn ACLs in female athletes in the last 15 years. That's not just a coincidence, right? That comes from sitting and not moving around. And often one of the things that's great about being outside is that you move in diverse and interesting ways. And again, this comes from kids spend 85% of their waking hours sitting, commuting, sitting in class, doing homework, right? And as a result of all that sitting, there's postural deviations, there's breathing dysfunction, there's high arousal from digital, stimulation that results in sort of chronic stress. Students develop dopamine resistance from all that social media stimulation. And then they're not sleeping. I could get into the science of why that is. But if you look at, pro-depressive symptoms, deficits in memory and learning, greater likelihood to be obese, a lot of that comes from sort of the lifestyle and the interaction with technology. And it's not to say that we can't use technology. I actually am a big believer in it, but we need to use it skillfully. So all of that, is to say that, these kids are in many cases kind of struggling. But the great thing is that I think that we are in a situation where, especially in Maine, we have this incredible gift of the natural world, the outdoors. And so that combined with giving kids certain tools around learning to manage their state and giving them the locus of control, I think is a really incredible opportunity. And I would hope that as schools are trying to create strong, healthy human beings, that would be part of what they would look at, right? So if you're outdoors, we know that there are negative ions in the environment that reduce depression. They promote antimicrobial activity, and they up-level cognitive performance. We know that being outside lowers stress and cortisol, enhances learning. It can reduce the symptoms of attention deficit disorder and improve focus. right? Where in this world we're constantly surrounded by electrical signals and Wi-Fi, which have been proven to cause oxidative stress, neuropsychiatric and cellular DNA damage, and to impact the endocrine system. So it's really important to get outside and get away from that. I also think that it's really important that these students learn to develop empathy and familiarity with the natural world. You know, I always say that unless aliens land, climate change is going to be the biggest things that these kids are going to deal with in their lives, and kind of all the things that result from climate change. So having some familiarity with it, I think is really important. And then finally, kind of where I'll kind of go with this next is that taking students outside is a logical place to teach students how to control their physiology and to develop mindfulness, right? Because when you're outside, things slow down a little. It's easier to reflect. We know that reflection is an important part of learning and adaptive neuroplasticity that's often overlooked in like tightly scheduled school settings. We know that outside movement and seeing natural light lowers cortisol and results in better sleep, which helps learning, right? Because the integration of working memory that's part of the learning process happens when we're asleep. And a lot of these kids are not getting enough sleep. I'll also say that creating a movement-rich environment outside, right? If Todd is taking students down those trails or up that ski hill, like if they're moving on different planes of movement than they are if they're playing on the lacrosse field or if they're in school, and that helps them develop different muscles. It's actually really good for your brain as well. It helps students move in diverse ways, develop a full range of motion. And then as far as mindfulness goes, there's a variety of techniques, but I think, again, if you take students outside, away from fluorescent lights, away from screens, then it just helps a lot to really, for students to be able to shift into this state. So we now know that the best tool that we have for anxiety is a slow, controlled exhale. That's what science is teaching us. A slow, controlled exhale, preferably through the nose. It affects what's the vagus nerve, which connects the brain stem down to the nervous system. It controls your heart rate variability, your state, and your physiology. So something like that, which can also lead to, we call box breathing or other breathing techniques. And again, any of these techniques can be used to downregulate, or if you need to upregulate your nervous system. One of the great gifts about taking students outside is we now know that one of the best ways that you can use to downregulate your nervous system and relax is through panoramic vision. There's a lot of really interesting research right now coming out of Stanford. You know, and we see that, you know, the digital concussion that I mentioned, that idea comes out of your eyes get focused on a little narrow screen, right? Whereas if you can step outside and for 5 minutes, sort of look at the horizon and look in a more panoramic vision, it kind of just helps you to relax. And it's a really useful tool. I'll also say that getting students out into natural light is really important. We're increasingly learning that a lot of people are sort of in a version of jet lag most of the time because they wake up, they're under fluorescent lights, they're looking at screens all day, and their circadian rhythm is kind of just really skewed. So anytime you can get people outside kind of queued up with natural light, with natural cycles of the sun, darkness, it really helps. We actually have neurons in our eyes that control our mood and body temperature. And so giving those the proper cues makes things much more healthy. And then lastly, I think this is a really good opportunity to teach kids cognitive literacy, right? To take them outside where things are a little more quiet and be able to say, okay, so when you feel excited, you know, that's dopamine, and here's how you can respond to that. Or if you're feeling sad, here's another brain chemical that you might be feeling, and here's some things you can do about that. So yeah, I think that adventure-based learning, outdoor learning is just really important, and combined with mindfulness, it just seems like a really logical antidote to so many of the issues around anxiety and health issues that we're dealing with. Especially as we move into sort of trying to reintegrate schools coming, you know, through the COVID process, you know, being able to talk about doing breath work to deal with anxiety, talking about respiratory science so that we know exactly what we can do and what we can't do. Taking classes outside obviously makes a lot of sense because there's a lot more space outside. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity, and it doesn't have to be complicated. We're not talking about like deep meditation and of Tibetan monks here. Like literally, if you can teach like a basic technique around breath work, you can have someone kind of learning to relax themselves, or if they need to heighten themselves, like pretty quickly. You know, through this program, Physiology First, I work with, we do work with students all around the United States. And usually when we go in and we talk to students and we say like, so what tools do you have at the end of the day to relax yourself? Like a high school student, like usually they're like, well, I can smoke some weed or I can get on Instagram, right? And like, wouldn't it be good if they could just learn how to do that in a healthy way themselves? And in the same way, like when you get off that school bus before your football game and you're all tired because you've been on the bus for 3 hours, wouldn't it be good to be able to like do some kind of healthy breathing exercise or something else instead of like pounding 3 Red Bulls that are then gonna like basically destroy you for the next like 6 hours? So anyway, all of which is to say, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I sent along a paper that just got sort of outlined some of the stuff I'm talking about. And I'm happy to be a resource for anybody or take any questions. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian. Todd, you're back on now to talk a little bit more about some of the techniques.
Yeah, so story time. One of my first years in education, I arrived at Mountain Valley High School, and I heard some stories at lunchtime about this event that the teachers had been made to go on the year before. There's a National Guard encampment up in the White Mountains, not far from our school. And they piled everybody up there for professional development camp. And I'm not sure, I wasn't there, but I heard stories, and I don't think it was presented in a really healthy way that had everyone jumping up for joy that they were outside. Some people very uncomfortable, and there was horror stories of how cold they were and miserable they were. So part of maybe some resistance you might have with getting staff to get outside more is that not everyone's comfortable with being outside a lot, or transitioning their classroom to being outside. So early on in my previous background is an outdoor recreation degree from Unity College, and I can remember through my coaching stuff and picking up hints and tips of how to be a better teacher outside. Classroom management in the outside. It can be as simple as positioning yourself with the sun in my face instead of the sun beating in my students' faces, because it can be really hard to concentrate and listen and hear me if the sun's in my face. Knowing your environment and trying to reduce, even in our indoor classrooms, we're trying to reduce distractions to the learning environment. And that might look a little different in your different spaces. So maybe providing some professional development around that and being like, hey, look, here's some things you should know about. During a certain couple of weeks, we have a really nasty black fly gnat problem. You don't want to go to the lower field. You're better off up in the snowmobile trail over by the brook. You'll do better there. So having that knowledge and presenting it and presenting some other techniques and how to use the spaces more effectively can put some teachers at ease when they might want to go out, but they're nervous about doing it. Couple other points. One thing I left out about the inventory, I sort of came up with the idea after Mayford, our state phys ed and health, recreation and dance group did what we called a report card a few years ago. And it was the state of the health of PE and health in our state, how it's being promoted, delivered, student hours, the overall quality. And that was a nice tool to bring to your administrators and say, hey, we got a C+ statewide, and in our building, we kind of shook out with a D-. So what can we do to fix this one thing? So I think coming up with that inventory as a report card, it'll be eye-opening to your staff, to your administrators, and then make it public as well if it seems like a good idea. trying to remember what other piece I was going to cover, Gene.
We were really interested when we talked about this, Todd, in the work you've done to adapt this spring, having kids monitor their hearts in
Right,
the
okay.
classes from away. I thought that was, yeah, please
Great.
talk about that.
Right. I was going to talk about a few things that I do and that I know that other staff and departments do already. When I was forced on March 13th to distance learning, I was right in the middle of starting a fitness unit with my freshmen and trying to cover a strand of fitness standards. And it was going to be really challenging to like get through some of the stuff that either it was a safety thing with weightlifting, or it was going to be just giving feedback in a feedback loop that was meaningful with certain activities. So one thing I want to do is check in with my students, see how they were in this new crazy situation and how stressed out they were, what was going on, and actually have them do some fitness related self evaluations that was going to gain some fitness knowledge. I could open up the door to talk about fitness knowledge. So every day for about 45, 50 days, I did a different resting heart rate challenge. And some of the resting heart rate challenges were in combination with an active heart rate after an activity. And I started, it was kind of emotional for me the first couple of days when students were checking in with their resting heart rate. It gave me a real attachment to my students, even though it was over Google Classroom, maybe hours removed, but it was important for me to hear from them. And I was hearing from them, I'm here, my resting heart rate's 58. I'm engaged, my resting heart rate's 62. My resting heart rate's 98. Okay, either you're on the outside spectrum of healthy or you're not quite getting how to do this. We got some error in data collection. That's okay. That's a talking point. That's a learning opportunity. We went back, and the first couple of weeks, it was just getting comfortable with how to do resting heart rates. Then we went with teach a friend in your family or how to do a resting heart rate. We had one where it was get your resting heart rate of your pet. And I got to tell you, that was probably the best one of the whole 2 months of doing it. Some of the stories of, because we got some high-strung pets out there, and the family trying to hold down the Labradoodle to get the heart rate was pretty funny. But and then I had students graphing their resting heart rate over time. So they were going back and getting all their data from each day and making graphs to look at where they were at and how they were doing. That's just one example of stuff I did. And I had students doing stuff outside, and I had a weekly challenge that was an outside challenge. And we used technology, and we used a Strava app, which runners and bikers, there's a community of folks that use the Strava app and some of it's competitive where they can look and see on a segment of trail if they're the fastest. And it's called a KOM, or the King of the Mountain or Queen of the Mountain. But then I used it to see what they were doing, and I would put a hike out there with my Strava. They could look at my map, how long it took me. I would put in a comment and a picture. Students would then have the week to go with their family and do that hike. With my biking class, they would have an assignment to do a certain ride. And then I could see the evidence through their Strava profile. How long did it take them to do the ride? You know, oh yeah, you did get a flat tire at mile 5. You know, it affected your time. You fixed it, great. At school already, and I just wanted to share some of the ways that Phys Ed has been collaborating with some of the other disciplines. Our physics department is a huge fan of our Phys Ed department. They are coming down to use our ropes course on a regular basis for terminal velocity on our giant swing. they love our adventure sleds out on Scotty's Hill. They do more like friction and coefficient and study of inertia and whatnot. There's one teacher that does a rockets lab outside. They use our outdoor wall for the ball drop. They do a gravity piece. Biology does a genetic spread out through one of our fields and forests. The English department does a writing and reflecting spaces. And one of our English teachers did a maypole activity on a big, huge maple tree with ribbons. And it was really representative. Everyone could see it and watch it. It was interesting. One of the math classes does a statistics thing, and they come out and they borrow all of our balls and they go outside and do a grid. And then the social studies, they use one of our rock walls and forests for a Civil War reenactment. So all throughout the school, there's been a history of people already going outside. And I think acknowledging that and increasing that this coming year is going to be very powerful.
I think that was most of the discussion. When we talked over the weekend, and Todd, maybe you can speak to this, the one sort of area that we were having a hard time figuring out how to transition to outside, or how to help folks do next year is the team building. Can you talk about that a little bit and say where you and Brenda Weiss, who I don't think has been able to get on, are struggling with how to figure that one out? We don't have an answer for that one.
Right. So many schools used the team building standard for a couple different reasons. You might have a high school that has, or a middle school that has 5 sending schools and you want to get all the kids to know each other, work together. So that's one reason why a lot of people do that. We use the teamwork standard under what some people call project adventure style outdoor education, challenge education. And so many of the activities actually involve putting a little stress into the situation, whether it's because you're all close together. There's a classic activity with a platform where you say, all right, everybody's got to get on the platform. Okay. And there's another activity where you try to flip a tarp over, but everyone's standing on the tarp and you can't step off the tarp. Well, those situations are designed to put a little stress and anxiety into a group, and it's used in a place during the semester that you want to get to that next level and see where they're at and see what challenges they can overcome. How do they solve it? And I keep track, and I had class number Project Adventure class 83 and 84 is the number of phys ed classes at Mountain Valley that I'm up to. And the thing I tell them is I don't get bored with these activities, because every year, every class is so different. They come up with a new solution to the whatever it is. So my challenge now, next year, depending on what the protocols, the class sizes are, what activities are just not going to work with social distancing, if that is an overarching theme. So what can I take as far as, it's like a recipe. Okay, we're out of this ingredient. We go and look up what's the ingredient you can substitute for it. All right, that activity that I had everyone close together, how can I get at that same moment or same idea, but not have everybody close together? I know already there's a couple activities. I'm just not going to make that activity happen. I'm going to have to come up with some other activities. And some of us, that's where we shine, is because we can dodge and weave and find that substitute to the recipe that still makes a good cake.
So Susan, I think we're opening it up for questions at this point, or comments, or help with expanding some of these ideas.
Yeah, folks are welcome to wave or put up your hand in the participant box, ask some questions, find out how some specific things were done.
Really lots and lots of interesting stuff. So
Very much so. I just put a note in the chat box. Ian, your information was very interesting that you shared, and just wanted to reiterate that health education classes do include the strategies around how to do practice breathing, relaxation, reducing stress. So a combination of working together with physical education and health education is important. Henry?
Yes. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I liked some of the things that Ian was talking about with the effects that screen time have on our lives. I know that in my own life, I worry about that a little bit because while on the one hand, I feel like I've gained access to information in a very rapid way because I use screen time. And I love the fact that regular people can give presentations, say on YouTube, about how to fix things and make things and so forth. And I spend a lot of my time doing that. But what effect does this have on us? And I know that I used to be into technology more than I am now. And I guess I tell people now I'm more into fixing my chainsaw and cutting wood and, of course, running out in the woods and being outside, not having my cell phone anywhere near me. And I spend a lot of time that way now. And, but I'm concerned because I see so many people that would be shocked if that's what they had to do. It would be not freedom from this obsession. It's almost like an obsession. And so anyway, and it just was interesting to hear Ian as he was just throwing out some scientific information about that I haven't studied some of that myself, but I'm not surprised. I would be shocked actually if there wasn't that information out there. And I'm just wondering when our medical community will start beating the drum a little bit louder, which they certainly do with chemical abuse. And I'm not trying to equate them exactly, but I'll just say I see a parallel there. Anyway, that's just my comment.
And Henry, they do talk about an addiction, the screen time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the direct physiological, which Ian was bringing up. What, you know, you can say that, oh, it's an addictive thing, but what if it causes no harm? Okay. Well, just from my experience, and my own personal experience, I don't play computer games at all. I haven't for really a couple decades now.
Yeah. It's a really recent phenomenon, isn't it? If we think about how many years we've actually been dealing with the phone connected to a face or the kid, it's not that long ago that this started happening. But there's already techniques in place, and teachers are trying to manage. I know we have these little baskets in each classroom, and I have a basket, and some days it's like, yeah, you can listen to your music while you work out. Or other days it'll be like, phones in the basket. Okay, make a Jenga stack of phones, please, because I'm going to talk and we're going to talk and we're not going to use phones today. So there's definitely that need to modern management of screen time. And I think just doing that oppositional study with your classrooms, what is the screen time as opposed to the outdoor time? And where's the balance? How do we find that balance?
Yeah, if I can speak, I'll just mention a few things. I mean, at this point in the world, I would argue that digital discipline, learning kind of skillful ways to use digital devices, is probably as or more important than like anything else you'd learn in school, for at least for like a middle school or high school student, right? Because that's at the core of how our culture works at this point. And then the health, I mean, first of all, they're designed to be addictive, right? We get little dopamine drips every time we hit a like or something like that. Like, they're designed to do that. And if we have the tools to deal with that and to know what's going on, that's one thing. But if we don't, that's no different than heroin. And then also, if you look at the EMF coming out of Wi-Fi and phones and stuff, I mean, you can look at the declining fertility rate. So when everybody's carrying their phone in their back pocket near their reproductive organs, that like long-term is going to have a big effect. And that's not something that really gets talked about. And I'm not I'm not an anti-technology person at all, but I think it's important that we know what we're dealing with and that we deal with it skillfully. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Henry?
Yeah, I just want to chime in. One other comment is that it really predates the computer, and it goes back to when really my parents were young and the television first boomed in, because when you really start looking back at obesity rates, when they really started to uprise, there is a strong correlation with the popularity of the television. And that's when people started sitting, although the radio too, one could argue people would sit around and listen to the radio, but that wasn't, you know, nearly as marathon sessions around the boob tube that people used to have. And I can remember that as a kid. Sometimes I would waste half a day sometimes.
Right.
And at least I had my own sense of saying, hey, I shouldn't do that again. And I was naturally a hyper person, high energy, and loved the outdoors. So it was easy for me to fix my mistake there. But anyway.
Well, and I think it also goes to, you know, even parenting in this world of electronics, because starting at a very young age, children are put in front of the TV to babysit. And so you're starting that issue of interacting with the brain very early on. Alicia?
I just have a question for the other teachers. I've heard anecdotally that students have done a pretty decent job keeping up with some of their core coursework, but some of the specials have been hard to keep them engaged, and that there's some talk about creating these teams for next fall so that coursework can be incorporated with physical activity, with wellness activities, to blend some of the requirements, some of the curriculum components into various subject areas. And I wondered if you've heard that, or if anybody, how you respond to that idea, if you would be excited about that.
Anybody? You can just go ahead, unmute, and share.
Well, one of the problems is, and I'm hearing it from my administrator and other teachers, we have a teacher leader team. It's so hard to nail down what the recommendations, what it's going to be to start. Everybody wants to go into action, but they're not sure what that action means. So we've heard even in our state phys ed meetings, some schools are coming up with 3 different plans. Other schools are waiting, and there's a spectrum of, do we react? Do we plan ahead? Are we proactive? But regardless of the COVID situation and going forward, we recognize within this small meeting that how valuable, important the outdoor component can be, and is going, and now we see that it's going to need to be. If I could just have had everyone in this meeting stand in front of that classroom I saw already divided, and what that space looks like to many of our learning styles, they're not going to be successful in that small little space. But, you know, bigger spaces, different spaces, outdoor spaces might become our next answer. It'll be a renaissance.
Yes, exactly. Well, that was thinking about Henry's comment of the addiction of screens, or just a large amount of time on screens. I have 2 teenagers, and I know that they've reached saturation point. Just like, no more screen, please. I'm tired of that. Like, when work and play was all happening on the same tool, they figured out new ways of play, and that trampoline is really active right now. So I appreciate witnessing it just in my own home environment.
Our 16-year-old brought us her phone at week 5. She handed her phone and said, "Keep this. I'm in a bad place."
Yeah. Those are good examples. Those are good examples to hear. I'm also, just for a little bit of feedback, if I could, from those of you who need to go back and figure out a way to make your work in a different environment. Like, I was really taken with Todd's suggestion for doing an inventory of outdoor spaces. and knowing that you have options beyond that tiny space that the administration might be creating for you with best intentions, but it's going to feel really confining. So that's part of my question. Does this outdoor inventory feel freeing to give you more choice where you can do your work? And then we can even go beyond that in a way that Teens to Trails might support you, tapping into the local rec department, connecting to the local land trust, just giving kids assignments for the days that they're not in school or they have homework that involves physical activity or exploration. We can help make sure that all the schools know the inventory of outdoor assets that are near to the school.
Anybody want to chime in?
Well, one of my questions that I'm looking forward to is, what does a field trip look like? Are field trips no longer a thing? And I budget every year to do 6 field trips. Each one of my lifetime pursuit classes do 2 authentic trips at the end of an 8-week unit to a place that is a real mountain bike venue, a place that has real hikes, or we go on a real river trip, as opposed to 8 weeks of being in one corner of the Swift River practicing skills. Now we're going to take it, and if those are taken away, that's a huge component to what is a culminating activity for these kids.
That's a real concern, Todd. And we don't know what that is going to look like and what the restrictions are going to be. So hopefully we'll get back to where we can do that sooner than later.
Yep.
And just anybody else can chime in, just wave at me and I'll stop talking. But one of the things that we're doing is this innovative project as a department with teachers and educators across the state, where we'll be doing the Community of Learning project, which is around integrating learning in project-based units that's being developed as a collaborative, but will be available to all schools in the fall with the intent of supporting the first quarter of school if people are looking for remote learning or hybrid units. They can also be used if they're face-to-face. They have lots of options. They'll have lots of options with them, but as a way of getting together. But it is that idea of you bring learning together across disciplines, at least 2, if not preferably 3 together. So looking at how health education, physical education fit within that. And it'll also just, Ian, you'll be interested that they'll all have a social emotional learning trauma-informed aspect to them as well. So supporting the individual in that way. So that's something that we are launching, and I think that Teens to Trails could be evident in that.
What was the name that you're giving to that?
It's called the Community of Learning Project.
Okay.
Community of Learning in Maine project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what our district went to for the last 5 or 6 weeks of the school year. I think CCC was what it's called, got together and made up community boards. 1 week was Nature Week. One was like Cuisine Week, where they cooked and did stuff that way. And there was like 8 different ideas around the board. This week is Extra, read all about it. It has a lot to do with making kind of news articles and different stuff about the COVID pandemic and what's been going on. But they kind of tied a little bit into PE, but I think we didn't have a big voice on the board to get our stuff across. So if we go back to something in the fall, I'm hoping we get more say in what we're doing.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to just put ourselves at the table, right, Kim? Just plop ourselves right there and say, guess what we can do to help? Yeah. Good. And I think we will see more of that. And though we don't know what the fall is going to bring, I do tell people be prepared, because the idea that there won't be a remote period is unlikely. So even if we go back face to face, we need to be ready for another remote period. But Todd, I love some of the examples you used around how would we modify what we're doing, because we have to be ready to do that and think the new strategies. So.
Will we be at the Samoset in November?
That decision is being made tomorrow night.
Oh boy. Well, good luck.
Yeah. So that's for our Mayford conference. There will be something, if it's done virtually or face-to-face, one or the other. But I want to thank you all, and Jean, jump right in. Thank you. This was a great presentation. I'm looking forward to being able to post it and share it out along with the materials and the links that you all provided for us. And as much information as we can get out to the field to support them is great. And knowing that you are all our resources that they can reach out to is really appreciated as well. And I will post the materials to the shared folder also. I'll put a PDF of the PowerPoint. Did you give me a link to the PowerPoint, or you sent it to me earlier today?
I think you should post Ian's document. That has a lot more content than the PowerPoint. But yeah, I just want to thank you all for participating. Know that we are adjusting our program just as much as you're needing to adjust. And if we have the chance to be a little bit more nimble or a little bit more direct in how we can serve you, please let us know. We're going to have a whole series of outdoor activities offered for the summer. Perhaps some of those can be useful for your content in the fall.
And please,
that's great.
Alicia, share those with us so that we can share them out as well.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you all. It's nice to meet all of you.